Coming up on Arirang News. North Korea attempts to put its second military reconnaissance satellite into orbit by launching a new rocket last night, but fails as the rocket explodes mid-air. The launch comes just hours after the South Korea-Japan-China trilateral summit in Seoul. United Arab Emirates President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan arrives in Seoul, kicking off his two-day state visit to South Korea, with defense and energy likely topping the agenda. South Korea's Nat'l Assembly today voted not to approve an opposition-led bill to launch a special investigation on whether the government meddled in the initial probe of a Marine's death last year. This follows a presidential veto last week. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We start with news of North Korea's failed attempt last night to place a second spy satellite into space. The rocket carrying the satellite exploded mid-air during the first stage of flight due to engine problems. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung leads us off.
A suspected military reconnaissance satellite launched by North Korea explodes mid-air. The video released by the South Korean military captured North Korea's attempt to put what would have been its second spy satellite into orbit. But as shown in the footage, the launch was a failure. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff detected the launch fired over the West Sea at about 10:44 p.m. on Monday night. But 2 minutes after the launch, it exploded above North Korean waters. The regime was quick to admit that its attempt had failed, with initial analysis showing the failure in the first stage of flight was due to a newly developed liquid fuel rocket motor. South Korea's military also cautiously assumed that the failure was due to problems with the rocket's engine. However, the JCS said more analysis is needed as the rocket exploded very early in its flight. The military said it must look into whether Russia was involved in the satellite program by not only providing technological guidance, but also potentially by providing equipment. An expert said Monday's failure is bound to bring Pyongyang and Moscow closer together.
Russia's pride has probably been hurt by this failure, and from that perspective, Russia is likely to actively cooperate with North Korea concerning the rocket engine in the future.
Experts say North Korea's plan to launch 3 spy satellites this year is now less likely, as it would take at least 3 to 6 months to solve issues discovered from Monday's launch. North Korea is also expected to stage provocations on the Korean peninsula to make up for its launch failure. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Seoul and Washington have rebuked the regime's latest launch attempt, reiterating its violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Our Choi Soo-hyung has the latest.
South Korea and the United States have both heavily criticized North Korea's attempt to put another spy satellite into orbit. During a meeting led by the director of the National Security Office, Chang Ho-jin, on Monday night, the launch was condemned as a violation of UN Security Council resolutions, regardless of whether it failed or not. During the meeting, attendees also called the launch an act of provocation that threatened peace and security on the Korean Peninsula, Northeast Asia, and the international community. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command said in a statement on Monday local time that it condemns the launch as a clear violation of several UN Security Council resolutions. The statement also said that the launch involved technologies directly related to North Korea's intercontinental ballistic missile program and that the U.S.'s defense commitments to South Korea and Japan remain ironclad. Meanwhile, Japan's Defense Minister Minoru Kihara called the launch a serious challenge to the entire world. Also, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated on Tuesday that an early morning phone call the nuclear envoys from Seoul, Washington and Tokyo had condemned the North launch and discussed ways to cooperate. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
After the leaders of South Korea, Japan and China announced a joint statement yesterday, North Korea was quick to condemn the summit, calling it a hostile act. Experts say Pyongyang's reaction was in fact aimed at China. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Jung-sil explains.
The North Korean Ministry of Foreign Affairs said if anyone tries to preach to us about denuclearization and tries to deny or violate our constitutional status, we will consider it the most severe violation of our sovereignty, in a statement on Monday. A ministry spokesperson released a statement about 3 hours after a joint announcement in Seoul by the South Korean, Japanese, and Chinese leaders. The three said in a statement that their countries reaffirmed that maintaining peace, stability, and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula and in Northeast Asia serves a common interest and is a common responsibility. And that Seoul, Tokyo, and Beijing respectively reiterated positions on regional peace and stability, denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and the abduction issue. A senior official of South Korea's unification ministry said it was rare for North Korea to publicly criticize a summit that China was involved in. The official said that even though Pyongyang's statement appears to be targeting the South, the fact that North Korea used the term anyone in a summit that China took part in was Pyongyang's way of indirectly expressing discontent with China. The North also said the nuclear threat from the U.S. triggered the regime to own nuclear weapons and that the idea of denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula was basically dead.
The North is continuing to try to convince the international community that denuclearization is no longer realistic. What it wants is nuclear arms control and not getting rid of them.
However, experts added recognizing the North as a nuclear state could set a dangerous precedent as it would undermine global non-proliferation efforts. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea and the U.S. are staging air drills this week in a show of force. The South Korean Air Force on Tuesday released footage of Seoul and Washington's combined air-to-air and air-to-surface live fire drills, which kicked off on Monday. The training involved AIM-9X Sidewinder, short-range air-to-air missiles fired by F-15K and KF-16 fighters. A total of 90 fighter jets will take part in the training until Thursday. Now moving on to the UAE president's state visit this week, which is fueling anticipation about prospects of greater partnership between Seoul and Abu Dhabi. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young explains.
Ahead of President Yoon Suk-yeol's bilateral summit with United Arab Emirates President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan on Wednesday, experts and the media are expecting a detailed follow-up on their pledge last year to further advance their special strategic partnership. On Monday, Emirates news agency said the two countries' partnership promises to unlock new frontiers, noting that trade and investment between the two sides have already seen a significant increase. Bilateral trade in non-oil sectors hit $5.3 billion in 2023, a 12.5% increase on year. But there's more room for growth as both countries move towards the post-oil era.
With South Korea's diverse areas of expertise, the potential cooperation is limitless. Nuclear energy, semiconductors, reusable batteries, automobiles, biodefense, and aerospace. Also, the UAE is in need of a strong manufacturing base. In this regard, establishing a South Korean industrial complex would build R&D centers or factories in the country. This could help the UAE reshape its industrial structure to support and expand exports of its domestic products to the world.
During the summit in Abu Dhabi last year, the UAE leader promised to invest $30 billion in South Korea's strategic industries. The two governments in October concluded a bilateral trade pact removing tariffs on over 91% of all items traded over the next 10 years. Seoul says on top of furthering cooperation in trade, energy and nuclear power, defense will be another major summit agenda on Wednesday.
Due to the threat posed by North Korea, South Korea has made strenuous efforts to achieve self-sufficiency in national defense. Following the United States reducing its military presence in the Middle East, the UAE has been aiming to reduce its security dependence on one particular country. Instead of engaging in only weapon sales, South Korea and the UAE would be able to reduce various geopolitical risks by jointly developing their arms industries and engaging more strategic and joint operations together.
Yoon's office has said the UAE is the only country in the Middle East with which South Korea has established a special strategic partnership, likening their solidarity to an alliance.
Rather than engaging in competition, the two countries must join together in solidarity in order to maximize both their national interest. Korea's technology and human resources, combined with the UAE's capital, enterprising spirit, and global nature, both countries can become pivotal force through their exemplary case of solidarity, encouraging peace and prosperity across both Middle East and Northeast Asia.
With the first ever visit of an Emirati leader to Seoul, Emirates news agency said the two sides are poised to demonstrate what development and prosperity paragons can do as partners. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
In other news, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu calls an Israeli airstrike on Rafah a tragic mistake. The strike, which killed dozens, triggered a fresh round of condemnation. Lee Seung-jae has more.
At least 45 people were killed and more than 200 others injured after an Israeli airstrike at a refugee camp in Rafah. In response to the casualties, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the strike a tragic mistake.
In Rafah, we already evacuated about 1 million non-combatant residents, and despite our utmost effort not to harm non-combatants, something unfortunately went tragically wrong. We are investigating the incident and will reach conclusions because this is our policy.
Netanyahu added that while every non-combatant that is hurt is a tragedy, for Hamas, it's a strategy. According to the Gaza Health Ministry and Palestinian medics, most of the casualties were women and children. Washington has long warned Israel to make sure there are limited civilian casualties in Rafah. But with dozens killed in the recent airstrike, the White House is now assessing whether Israel has crossed the line. U.S. officials speaking to media outlet Axios said that the Biden administration is assessing if the airstrike is a violation of what President Biden called a red line, adding that a humanitarian crisis due to the mass displacement of civilians from Rafah could also constitute a violation. Meanwhile, the EU has decided to resume its mission to directly manage and monitor the Rafah border crossing for the first time in 17 years. Joseph Borrell, the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security, announced Monday that an agreement was reached on the revival of the EU Border Assistance Mission at a meeting of foreign ministers of the 27 EU countries held in Brussels. The mission was first organized in 2005 by the EU to be dispatched to border areas marred in conflict to monitor, control, and manage the flow of people and goods as a neutral third party. It was dispatched to the Rafah checkpoint, but their activities were temporarily suspended after about 2 years when Hamas took complete control of the Gaza Strip in June 2007. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Israeli tanks have reportedly reached the center of the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Witnesses told Reuters on Tuesday that the tanks were spotted near Al-Awda mosque. The Israeli military said it would soon issue a statement about the Rafah operation. The ground operation in the southern Gaza city comes despite international scrutiny over the deaths of civilians in a recent airstrike. Israel has been increasing its military pressure in Rafah, believed to be one of the last strongholds of Hamas. The South Korea's National Assembly today voted not to approve an opposition-led bill for a special investigation into the death of a young Marine last year, one of the key contentious issues between rival parties. This follows a presidential veto of the bill last week. Our National Assembly correspondent Lee Si-hoo reports.
The National Assembly on Tuesday turned down the special probe into the death of a Marine in a rescue operation during last year's floods. In an anonymous vote of the total 294 votes cast, 179 voted for the bill and 111 voted against. 4 lawmakers abstained. For a bill already vetoed by the president to pass, it requires an approval from 2/3 or more of the lawmakers present, in addition to a majority attendance. This time, it would have taken 17 additional votes for the bill to pass. Ahead of the vote, there were expectations that more ruling People Power Party lawmakers might vote against their party. But the results suggest that there may have been some opposition members who did not back the bill. The bill, if passed, would have looked into whether the government interfered with the initial military investigation to allegedly cover up its fault in the incident. The PPP said that the bill is a, quote, political move aimed at targeting the president instead of investigating whether there really was professional negligence.
This special prosecution bill, which is pushed by the Democratic Party alone to produce results that suit its taste, is a tyranny of the majority party to undermine the spirit of separation of powers and paralyze fair judicial action for political gain.
The main opposition Democratic Party, on the other hand, said they must, quote, seek the truth, and said such is the main priority of the bill.
We can investigate the cover-up allegations and other matters during the following probe process, but I reiterate that the number one subject of the investigation is the Marine's death itself. So all the issues they have raised regarding this bill are either untrue or erroneous.
The DP vowed to push for the bill once again in the new assembly. Meanwhile, the parliament also passed another opposition-led bill, the revision to the Special Act to support victims of real estate fraud related to South Korea's unique rental system called jeonse. The revision calls for public institutions to provide priority relief for the victims prior to the collection of money through real estate sell-offs. The government and the ruling party have opposed the revision, citing risks to the government's financial viability, among other reasons. But the opposition today passed the bill with 170 approvals amid a walkout by the PPP. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
Also on the local front, there is another grim population forecast, this time indicating all regions in the country will start to see the number of deaths exceed that of births in about 2 decades. Our Park Gun-woo has more.
The population in all of the 17 administrative divisions in South Korea is expected to see a natural decline, with the number of deaths exceeding that of births from the year 2045. Already 16 of the 17 divisions are seeing a natural decline. That's according to the population estimates 2022 to 2052 data released by Statistics Korea on Tuesday. Currently, Sejong City was the only one out of the 17 administrative divisions that saw a natural increase in its population in 2022. But according to estimates, even Sejong will see a natural decrease in its population in around 20 years' time. It is estimated that the number of newborns there will stay at around 3,000 to 4,000 a year until 2052, but death figures will soar up to 5,000 a year. And all the other 16 administrative divisions will see natural decreases in their population as well. Also in 2052, all of the country's administrative divisions apart from Sejong City and Gyeonggi-do Province will see their total population fall compared to 2022, with Sejong and Gyeonggi-do seeing an inflow from other regions. The working population aged 15 to 64 will also decrease by 2052 in all administrative divisions except for Sejong, due to the continuous low birth rate. Ulsan City in the southeast of the country is expected to see its workforce shrink from 810,000 in 2022 to 410,000 in 2052, which is almost a 50% decrease. And every part of the country will be seeing increases in the proportion of people aged 65 and over. In 2052, that age group will account for nearly half of the total population in Jeollanam-do Province and Gyeongsangbuk-do Province. The age group is expected to account for over 45% of the total population in Gyeongsangnam-do and Gangwon-do provinces. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
Moving on, around the world, natural disasters are looking to become more frequent and violent. From the Indian Ocean, Cyclone Ramal swept across coastal Bangladesh and northeastern India, while deadly storms and tornadoes in the U.S. left destruction in Kentucky, Missouri, and Texas, killing dozens of people. Cha Yun-kyung has more.
Raging rainstorms and stormy seas engulfed coastal towns of southern Bangladesh and northeastern India, destroying houses and overturning trees. Remel, one of the strongest cyclones to hit the regions in recent years, traveled at speeds of up to 135 kilometers per hour on Sunday night through Monday, killing at least 16 people. Thousands of houses and roads were flooded, with shrimp farms and river protection dams destroyed by strong gales and heavy rain.
The banks of the river are broken and water has entered through this side of the village. Many people are marooned. The loss is immense.
Due to the powerful cyclone, more than millions of others evacuated their homes as they cut the electricity supply to millions of others.
Trees have fallen on electrical wires, because of which power has been snapped. There is a shortage of water as well, and daily activities like cooking have been affected. That is why we are avoiding going outside or home.
Meanwhile, the cyclone wasn't the only natural disaster to leave casualties and destruction over the weekend. Over in the U.S., powerful storms and tornadoes tore through the state of Texas on Saturday night, Missouri on Sunday, and Kentucky on Monday, killing at least 20 people and destroying numerous homes.
This is a total devastation. I have never seen something like this. It was terrible, and I couldn't conceive the strength that it had, and it was only...
The United States National Weather Service warned that other states, including Washington, D.C. and New York, could also be in danger as the storms move east. Cha Yong-kyung, Arirang News.
Tomorrow, the temperature will rise along the East Coast, which had cool air today. Hot temperatures will be seen in this area. The early summer heat will continue during the days nationwide for the time being. Seoul will see daytime temperature rising to 27 degrees Celsius tomorrow, and parts of the East Coast will also rise to nearly 30 degrees. However, as the daily temperature difference is still wide, it is easy to catch a cold. Please take care of yourselves. There will be strong winds in the eastern parts of the country, the coast of Jeollado provinces, and on Jeju Island today. Extra precautions are necessary. Tomorrow morning, Seoul will start off at 16 degrees Celsius. Daily highs will move up to 27 in Seoul and Chuncheon, Daejeon and Gwangju 28 degrees. Sunny and clear weather similar to today will last for a while. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that is all for this newscast tonight. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with the most up-to-date news at 9 a.m. with New Day at Arirang. Take care.